Alright, let's talk Legion bases. So, Legion bases are these giant underground layers where you go to shoot a bunch of dudes, and they make up, a good chunk of the game. Maybe a third, depending on how much you like running around the city. You can see that they look very impressive. This is a really unusual and interesting setup to me. This is not how most games do it, so let's discuss that. In most games, what you would do is you would use a tile-based layout, and you'd build all of your rooms out of repeating tiles, and then you would put them together using some kind of heuristic, so you could have, oh look, we got procedural dungeons in our game. As far as I can tell, they didn't do either of those things. These dungeons are not procedural, and they're not made of tiles. Now, that isn't to say that there aren't repeating elements. For example, that repeats. A lot of the stuff repeats. But what doesn't repeat is the actual room layout. Every room layout is 100% unique. And all of the pieces that make it up, like the exact way the floor goes up and down and any sort of iconic platforms in it, are also 100% unique, and you never see them anywhere else. This raised dais, never seen anywhere else. You would think that they would use it in another room, maybe drop it down and make it into an observation platform, but if they have, I have never seen it. There is a different room that is very nice and circular, and it has an entirely separate set of circular objects and circular platforms. It's like they made every room custom. The floor layouts, obviously they reused as much as they could. They reused the pillars and the stairs and the doors and the plug-and-play objects, but they don't reuse the layouts, and that includes rooms like these. This hallway is not made out of a couple of different common hallway elements. This doesn't appear in any other hallway. I think that they reuse it in another room, but I haven't really noticed. This cutout isn't part of the standard hallway module set. It looks like they created this hallway straight 48 or something, and just plug it in this particular place. If we come in here, you can see this room with its strange little side elements and this broken, this split staircase that comes over here. And then this little bulb. You would think that would mean, oh, well, then this here is the size of one of their tiles. This, what is that, 8 meters, 6 meters? That is the size of their room tile, right? As far as I can tell, no. I think they really just, went into Maya and extruded up the room layout as a standalone object. Because I don't remember ever seeing anything even vaguely like this layout in another room. And that's astonishing to me. It's like, wow, you guys really went that far for your one-off rooms. That's amazing. And also really inefficient. Interesting. Now, the reason they did this, I think, is because kaboom! Oh, look how good this looks, right? If you've played Fallout or Mass Effect or, I don't know, any game that has sci-fi bases, they feel really cramped and awful and repetitive. They don't have to. Not if you're actually building all of the rooms from scratch using basic extrude tools. You can build whatever room you want. So you can build these wonderful cathedral rooms, and they're not modular. They're all customized. Shall we see a couple more customized rooms? Because I sense you might not be convinced. There's going to be fighting in these. Oh, look, here it is. This is the exact same dungeon hallway. See? It's exactly the same room. When I said that this doesn't appear in any other room, I obviously meant any different room. If the same room appears twice, it's the same room twice. So here we've got a combat hallway. This is going to get a little dangerous, so I'm going to switch over to someone who can take on turrets. So this combat hallway shows up hundreds of times with different loadouts of enemies, and it's just a big straight hallway room. And none of these doors ever open. It's not like they change which doors open and which doors don't or anything like that. You're always moving through the room in the same directions, doing the same things. And here we've got one of these rooms here where we have a very interesting 2-floor layout, right? And you would think that these would be like, oh, well, there's like a 2-tier tile that they use to build these elements, like a Fallout style interiors, and then they just added this to add, to an empty floor to make it look good. And maybe they did that, but every single instance of this room is 100% identical. The same decorations, the same layouts, the same everything. There is no difference. No matter how many times this room shows up, there is no sign that it is ever made out of tiles that can vary. There's no variance on this room as far as I can tell. How about this room? Oh, well, this is the iconic laser dungeon room. Got a laser basement? Everybody needs a laser basement. Come on, give me a laser basement pulse. Bzzah! Boom! Laser basement. Whoa! Yeah, none of these walls appear anywhere else. None of the laser basement elements ever show up in any other room. There's no other giant laser rooms. They don't use the giant laser randomly in other places. There are other rooms with giant lasers in them, and they're not the same lasers. They're not the same projector. They're not the same effects. They're a completely different set of laser props and laser special effects. Every room is built custom and unique. It's absurd. Oh, I actually am missing a little bit of health, so let's go ahead and grab that. And it's an interesting choice. It's one that I don't think I've ever seen a game make. And I think they made it just because they have these really impressive visions of how they want the games to go. They want this room to look like this, with its cathedral shape. So every single time you see this room, it's going to look exactly the same. Even the decorations are going to be the exact same. Now, obviously, these props show up in other rooms, but the floor layout is always going to be exactly the same. And as far as I can tell, you never actually have to go through this door. There's never anything beyond this door that makes sense for you to go through it. Like it looks like it's like the big door, right? But there's always just a storage box room behind it. Like this is like, why would you have a giant door leading to a storage room? Seriously? Anyway, let's get some more loot.
Nice.
So that's really unusual, and I don't really know why they did that. It was an interesting choice, and I would be curious to hear from them as to why they chose to do it this way. I also think that they don't procedurally set up these rooms. I don't think... Oh, look, here it is. See that? That's the same wall unit in the hallway that we saw, except it's been distorted and stretched and turned into a completely different prop. Anyway, I think that the way they did this means that they're not recombining the rooms in a procedural way. I think that every dungeon in the game has a manually created layout. Maybe that's not true, but as far as I can tell, every time I've come through a dungeon, it's always been the exact same room progression as some other dungeon I've been through. And that's also unusual for a game like this. But all of that handcrafting smacks of intent. They wanted to create these rooms to feel a specific way, and they wanted to avoid the stench of repeated square modules, the sort of thing that you get really sick of in other games. And as far as I can tell, they succeeded. Although these do eventually feel repetitive because you start to see the same rooms over and over again, they never feel cramped or boring. And that's quite an accomplishment. Anyway, that's it. Have a good one.